Welcome to What the Puck. I'm Puck. With me tonight is V La Bianca. V, if you could take a moment to introduce yourself.
For sure. Hi, Puck. Hi, Ethan. My name is V. I work with the atheist community of Austin to create the shows Talk Heathen and Secular Sexuality. I'm also in the process of developing my own channel called How to Skeptic, which should start putting out videos fairly soon. Mostly I'm here because I'm a relatively new atheist I hate the term celebrity. That's a terrible word to call yourself. But I'm starting to enter into this space where people know who I am in a very niche group. And I'm starting to see the effects of cancel culture and just be more aware of it as a general concept. So this is kind of my fresh take on the topic, I suppose.
It's been on my mind too for a considerable amount of time. And if you've been paying attention to any online communities, let's say in the past 3 or 4 years, you're going to have seen examples of call out culture and cancel culture, where somebody says something which is socially inappropriate, downright damaging in some cases, and they are called out to, well, some would say an extreme. And we're here today to try to suss this out, and we're going to go back and forth and talk about this. And I suppose, first of all, we should probably set a definition. So, V, what the puck is cancel culture?
So, canceling for me, the term I use for it is a targeting of social capital, right? So there's boycotting, which is similar but not the same thing. So think about when Nike was boycotted because they aligned themselves with Colin Kaepernick a couple of years ago. People boycotted Nike, but the vice president of Nike, I don't know who that would be, what could still walk down the street or put out content without worrying about personally being targeted. His family, his friends didn't need to distance themselves from him as an individual. So his life was pretty much unchanged. It was just a targeting of economic capital. Whereas with cancel culture, it seems to be a product of our increasingly personal brand driven industry, especially here online, where our brand is our personality, right? We are aligning the two, that the thing that we're putting out is ourselves. And so it's kind of an attack on social capital as opposed to just economic. Of course, there's a link there, right? Because if you have to stop creating content, you lose that revenue stream. But ultimately, I think the focus of cancel culture is to target someone's social capital to the point where they need to either rehabilitate themselves or leave the community altogether.
The cancel culture is so new and call out culture is so new that I was having a hard time pinning down a definition for it. I mean, you got the Wikipedia definition, and that seems to cover a good amount, but even then it's lacking in a little bit of the nuance, right? So whenever difficult stuff comes up, I turn to the seminal work on the subject, which I love this. Anytime ContraPoints comes up with something, like, it could be brand new and somehow it's already a seminal work because the next day people are going to be quoting it. It's fantastic. Right. This like it takes me about 3 or 4 viewings of any one video to fully suss out the content of it because it's like dripping with irony. It's gorgeously done, but it takes me. It's not the way I usually receive information. Anyway, ContraPoints comes up with this definition, and I like it, at least to forward the conversation. So canceling is online shaming, vilifying, and ostracizing of prominent members of a community by other members of that community. Now, I think that's the important distinction on the last one, and that's something that I wanted to talk about. Because whenever you go online, there's going to be some people who just plain don't care about what kind of content you do. There are going to be some people who strongly disagree with it right off the bat already, but those aren't the ones that we're worried about when we talk about cancel culture. When we're talking about cancel culture, we're specifically talking about canceling within our own community.
Right.
Now, on the first sight, this seems like a really bad thing to do because our community is already so small anyway. The last thing we want is infighting, and worse than that is public infighting, right? Like, now it just gives the outside people even more ammunition. It's like, you can't even get this right between yourselves. Why should we pay any attention to you? So what are your thoughts on the idea of communities attacking each other from within?
Right. I think that it is multifaceted, as all of this conversation is going to be. And I do want to preface everything I'm saying with the understanding that this is all generalized. We can speak in generalities here because we've got about an hour. There's a lot to cover, but we're fully aware that there are outliers, there are nuances that, need to also be taken into consideration. I think overall, my thought is that canceling is not good or bad. It's a tool. Like any tool, a hammer isn't good or bad. If you use it to put up a painting, it's good. It's doing its job. If you use it to knock someone in the head, then it's doing a bad job. It's not the hammer's fault. So I think for canceling, it's a very similar thing where it can be useful. And it can be a useful tool to use, but it's pulling out the big guns, right? It's at the last straw when everything else has failed, and you cannot reach this person through empathy. You cannot reach this person through education. For a fact they're not just going to spin themselves into oblivion, which happens more often than you would think. And it is a situation where active harm is being done, and you need to step in and do something about it as a responsible member of a community. So I would pull a little bit against the idea that it's only by the same community. I think that that tends to be, you need the buy-in of your community in order to be canceled, I would say. But I don't think it necessarily always originates there, nor should it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about this. You're a prominent name in our circle. Me, not so much. And if somebody didn't like something I said, I don't think that I could say that I have been canceled. Just I'm not even worth listening to in the beginning, right?
Oh, so I am.
Yes, you are,
Yeah.
and you really are. But I'm trying to put this into a good cohesive thought, because this is so nuanced and it's so all over the place, and what applies in one situation is not going to apply in another. So we could give a name of someone who was canceled and say this happened to this person, but then we look at another situation, it's like this is completely not applicable to them, right? And it's so difficult to talk about this without talking about specific incidents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to talk about a specific instance, one of the things that gets to me about cancel culture is that there doesn't seem to be a statute of limitations. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can dig up something that happened 5-10 years ago, and somehow that's still going to bite you in the toes if you become a new content creator now. And we see this not just in online content creation, but also in entertainment spheres, right? Like you see, Bill Cosby recently, a lot of people came out about poor behavior. This happened decades ago. Okay, so now what I'm wondering is, as content creators, we ride a fine line, especially the edgier ones like us. We're talking about some somewhat controversial topics, right? Our moral basis as a society has changed in the past 10 years, in the past 20 years. Some things that were okay back then are not okay now, and we know that. But that doesn't mean that we didn't put something out, especially like comedians or something. Saturday Night Live is a very edgy show, right? They got nailed. They got nailed for it. But so why isn't there not this understanding of it was different back then? We know better now, but we can't hold somebody accountable now for not being as socially aware as they should have been 20 years ago when nobody was.
What are your thoughts on that?
Okay.
I was just watching the newest video by Renegade Cut, and if you don't know their channel, you should definitely check them out. They do long form discussions on a whole bunch of stuff, a lot of social issues. And the name of this one video was The Cult of Tradition. And it framed this idea about statues and taking them down and all of that, because right now we're basically canceling a lot of statues, which is a good thing. But he talks about how we have this myth that, oh, well, we can't blame the founding fathers or take their statues down because they just didn't know better. They were slave owners, but that's how it was back then. Or it wasn't considered to be as bad back then as it is today. They just didn't know. And there's this pervasive idea that some things just were okay back then that aren't now. And I don't think that's the case. I think that Bill Cosby, doing what he did, I don't know the kind of language you guys want me to use on this show, was just as bad back then as it is today. And in that case, I would say it there is no enlightenment that happened over the last couple of decades that made it suddenly not okay to, you know, have sex with women while they're asleep. Or for example, some of the more recent ones are like, I don't know, like blackface, right? Like, is this something to cancel someone over? Oh, well, I was only 23. Okay, well, even as a 23-year-old, you should know that's not okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking at it like, are you familiar with the movie Blazing Saddles?
Yes.
Which would absolutely not fly today.
No.
Yeah.
Right, but now I'm not saying that we should say Blazing Saddles is a very important work in its genre, and we should still revere it for the comedy gold that it is. We understand it's trash, okay? We get that now, and we're not going to go and show it now. And even if when they do show it now, boy, do they bleep out a lot. They even bleep out the beans scene, okay? They will not be airing that anymore. So it's like we're making the progress, and I agree with you that, like, okay, we're basically canceling Confederate statues now. That's cool. But what I'm talking more about is like, this happened. Somebody made the movie Blazing Saddles, and at the time that it was made, a lot of that stuff was just, okay, it's edgy, it's borderline inappropriate. It's not nearly as it, like, if somebody put that movie out today, it would not nearly be as acceptable. So now do we look at, was it Mel Brooks? I forget. Is it Mel Brooks?
It's Mel Brooks.
It's Mel Brooks. Like, we're going to look at Mel Brooks and say, look what you did back in the 60s and 70s. I can't even watch Spaceballs anymore. So has anyone called them on? I actually don't know, Sassy. I don't know if anybody's actually called it out, or if they're just, okay, we just understand that we're not going to be showing this movie anymore. Then I think about other things, like you hear about that Golden Girls episode that was that Hulu decided.
I have so many thoughts about that. Yeah.
Go.
So here's a concern that I have, which is, it seems like there is this panic to not be canceled, and so the way that people address that is to go back and pretend like nothing happened. And I don't think that that's useful for a couple of reasons. First, you're not fooling anybody. Second, of course, Golden Girls was going to be problematic at some point. Like, it was made, you know, in a time where, again, like you said, that wasn't considered to be taboo. And so, first of all, like, it's ridiculous to try and hold Golden Girls to that standard and pretend like you were as woke as you are now. But also, it seems to be a method of shoving things under the rug as opposed to addressing them. Right? And to say, hey, look at this Golden Girls episode. Here's why that's weird and bad, and we don't do that anymore. That would be educational. That would help people understand where you're coming from. It would show an actual, actual progress. Here's where we were. Here's where we are now. Getting rid of things like that out of this fear of being canceled just sweeps it under the rug and doesn't address the actual issue to me. So in situations like that, I think, I don't know. Nobody I know who is actually advocating for social justice and actually advocating for equity is worried about a Golden Girls episode. That is purely white people guilt. So
it is, but at the same time, like, as a new content creator, like, I saw someone made a joke in chat earlier that someone's going to find some pictures of me back when I was a Civil War reenactor, which, you know what, I'm in Ohio, okay, so Ohio is very important in the Civil War scene. Like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know what's going to come back and bite me in the puck, and but that's the crazy part about this, is because I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it, right? Like, I've been a Twitch content creator for several years now, and I'm willing to bet that sometime in there I've said something stupid, because we've all said something stupid in our time, and now we know better, right? And I can hardly wait for someone to go up there and say, hey, look at this clip from Puck back when he was known as Java. Look, he has to go by a different name because he knew that he was doing things inappropriate. And let's take a look at how not only did he do this, but the proof that he did this one time means he is absolutely irredeemable. He is phobic. He is hateful. He's a bigot. There's no coming back from this, right? So now we touch on the next part of cancel culture, which is not just, you know, like, these things happen, we need to call it out, but how does one even come back from this? Because it seems like one of the parts of cancel culture is you take an action, and that action grows somehow, I don't know how, into not just this was a bad thing to do, but this is a bad person. It's like
Yeah.
I said something that was inappropriate. Am I now officially irredeemably racist? Don't even bother with this one. He's gone.
Right.
So how does that happen? Like I don't know. I can't even think of too many examples. I think of ContraPoints as one example, where
Yeah,
one
ContraPoints
statement was
actually has a
taken.
very,
Yeah.
yeah. She has a very well broken down kind of structural assessment of that process of how one thing becomes something else. But for me, I'd say that it's an equation of what you put out into the world as who you are. And a lot of the time that makes sense, right? You put something out into the world, I put out the content I put out, I want to be known for it. I tie myself to the content that I create. And so it can be very tricky to then say, okay, well, this is me, this is the stuff I'm putting out and I want to be known for this. This is the stuff I've put out and I don't want to be known for that. So for me, it does get a little bit messy there. And it's understandable that some people might be very reactionary to that, because if you're building your brand on what you say and then you say something that is off color or wrong or untrue, then you suddenly become tied to that by default. So I would say that the way to get out of that, or rather the way to avoid that altogether, is to actively call yourself out before anyone else does. So I don't know if you guys know who Alana Joy is, or Alyssa Joy.
I do not.
Alyssa Joy. Oh no, I forget which one it is. She is a pretty well-established content creator on YouTube, and she just a couple of days ago put out a video called Calling Myself Out. Nobody was talking about her. No one's canceling her, but she knew that she probably has done some things in the past that she wanted to address and get ahead of. And she was like, hey, here's why that was wrong. Here's what I learned. Here's how I'm doing better. Here's how I'm dedicating my platform to the moving forward with progress and supporting the BLM movement and all of this. So she sat down and she just came right out and said it, which I think is a very positive way to address that if that's something you're concerned about in your own past. If you did learn a new thing and now you've changed your mind and you have a platform where you can share this new thing and why you changed your mind, apart from just, covering your own butt, I think that it is useful and a responsible use of your platform overall.
We are 100% on the same page. I've definitely tried, while I haven't made a specific video, like you said, Alyssa did, I do actively try and remind people that the person that's here right now is not the same person. Like, I look back at some of my memories on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Some of the garbage I spewed out, and I am embarrassed and ashamed. Now, I won't delete that stuff, because to me, I think deleting or trying to hide it is one of the worst things you can do. I'll leave it up. Occasionally, I'll even take a screenshot and be like, hey, look at this crap I used to post. Like, yeah, because to me, it's important to also show that people can change, because too many times we're shutting down the opposition and refusing to engage with them and just say, well, they're not going to change. Well, they do. You just have to find a way to get through to them.
Right. Being transparent about what you've learned and why and how you've changed is going to contribute to a larger narrative where people feel like maybe this person is actually being honest and they're shifting viewpoint, and maybe canceling isn't the only course of action we have here, because it shouldn't be. It again, like, one of my favorite phrases is if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if canceling is the only thing you know how to do, if it's the only method of online social justice that you feel like you can participate in, then of course you're going to use it all the time, and you're going to use it on people who don't deserve it. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that.
And how do you think we can get people to stop reacting so fast to cancel people? So, for example, Sassy Heathen brought up James Charles in the comments. I don't know if either of you are familiar with that. James Charles is a fashion makeup designer who last year was canceled after these allegations came out with him. And everyone jumped on the bandwagon talking about how he was taking advantage of straight men and just saying some pretty nasty stuff. And then when the truth eventually came out, he bounced back. But it was everybody just jumping on this bandwagon to cancel him. So how do we stop that from happening?
Yeah. I don't think you can put that on you. I don't think anyone listening to this can stop cancel culture, but you can step away from your participation in it if it's not something you agree with. So let me use a specific example of something that happened to me a couple weeks ago. I won't name names or anything, but this is kind of how I de-escalated myself because I was ready to jump in and take a side. So I have two friends, and I call them friends. I met one of them once, the other one I've talked to online, so, internet friends. And one of them started accusing the other one of being an abuser and perpetuating abuse, not necessarily like sexual relationship abuse, but abuse of people who looked up to them, abuse of people who followed what they were saying and, considered them a figurehead of their community. And I was concerned, obviously, because I hadn't seen that behavior. So I reached out to this person and I said, hey, what makes you say this? I have not experienced this person doing this. I know that my experience is not the experience of everyone else. And often abusers will use other people to buffer for them because, oh, well, they're so nice. They wouldn't do that. I haven't experienced that. Meanwhile, they're perpetuating something on the side. So I reached out. I was like, hey, can you tell me more about what's going on? I want to make sure that I'm not supporting somebody who is being abusive. So they wrote back to me and they gave me their opinion. And it was just that. There were no, for lack of a better term, receipts, right? There were no screenshots, there were no specifics, there were no names, there were no dates. There was nothing that I could latch onto and investigate. It was just how this person felt. So I was like, okay, that seems like more of a personal thing and less of a thing I need to worry about myself. Over the course of the next couple days, I saw this person who was accusing this other person of abuse getting more and more violent in their tweets towards this person and the people who supported them, to the point where they were actively hostile. So I first of all wrote to them and was like, hey, I don't know what they did. I'm not making a claim there, but this kind of language is not acceptable. This is not a thing that I can get behind. You need to tone it down. Then I went to this other person. And at this point, I was like, okay, well, if threats are being levied, like I need to know a little bit more if I'm going to actively interact with these people. So I reached out, and this other person thanked me for reaching out. So if you are concerned that reaching out is going to be inappropriate or concerning or in any way offensive, as long as you know the person a little bit, reach out, ask these questions, because more than likely they're waiting for people to come to them so they can explain their side of things. And you should know all sides, right? So I went to them, I said, hey, I'm seeing this happen. I don't know what to think. Can you give me your point of view? Here come the receipts, right? Here come the screenshots. Here come the dates. Here come the people. Here come examples of when these same groups of people, these same individuals attempted to cancel other people for minor things that were then disproven. So it became this very clear picture to me of, okay, which one of these people has the information? Clearly, they both believe what they're saying. Clearly, they both think they're the good guy. That's fine. I don't need to weigh in on that. All I need to do is determine which person convinced me personally, so that when I make a decision, I can stand by it, even if it's going to put me on the wrong side of some people. So I made an executive decision that could be wrong, right? Like if it's two people you've never met, or two people who have had an interaction that you are not privy to, you really will not know who is telling you the truth. Probably they both think they are. So you need to make that call. And I made it. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to contribute to the people who are calling you abusive, because I personally have not been convinced of that. And they need to make that because they have the burden of proof, right? They are the ones making that positive claim. So what to take from that, I suppose, is to de-escalate things. You need to de-escalate yourself. You need to make sure that you yourself are not contributing to something mindlessly. If you're doing it because you're afraid of what the community is going to say if you don't, if you're doing it because you have all those icky Twitter feelings that rise up and you're like, hey, to say something and do something because these people don't understand, take a breath. Don't do that. In fact, don't decide who gets canceled at all, because it's really not your call unless someone is actively perpetrating harm and you can see it yourself. To me, that's kind of the crux there. So if somebody is actively doing something that is harmful and you can see it and you are offended by it, then yes, raise your voice, lend yourself to that cause. But otherwise, you are not the judge. You are not the jury. And you can have all the opinions you want, but being punitive because of a situation that doesn't affect you and you don't know the facts for is a recipe for disaster.
So you said two things, and then like there's two different places we can go, and we'll probably address both of them because we have plenty of time right now. But first of all, I did want to open it up to chat in case you had any questions for V or Ethan or myself or anybody in general about this topic. Feel free to throw it into the comments, and we'll try to aggregate them for near the end. So one of those things that you touched on is that one great way to handle this thing quietly is to talk to a person, like reach out to them individually and have that private conversation. I love the idea of private conversations. The problem is the public is not privy to these private conversations, have no idea that anything happened, quote unquote, behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all know the event that I have in mind when I talk about that. So yeah. Don't know if we need to repeat it, but we don't know. And for the people who don't know, especially if it's as a huge an event as it was, people are going to jump to conclusions.
Right.
And then that leads very neatly into the other thing where there comes like a critical mass point where so many people have decided already this is what it's going to be, that now if you don't cancel this person or if you don't jump on this particular bandwagon, you're one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think of it as cancel by proxy, where even if you were not related at all to the initial event, if you have done anything at all to even indicate that you like this person, you're included. And you're drawn into that web of things that must be canceled, especially because you did not publicly denounce them, even though you had nothing to do at all with what originally came out. And again, I think we're talking about the same situation here. So based on those two things, like where do you want to go? Do you want to talk more about the cancel by proxy, or do you want to talk more about oh goodness, I've already lost track of what the first one was.
Private conversations.
Private conversations. Where do you want to go next?
Well, I think we can dismiss the private conversations piece fairly quickly. So let's jump into that and then move into cancel by proxy, because that is a fascinating topic that I definitely want to delve into. So private conversations that happen in private are private, and you don't deserve them as an audience. Like, that is not you are not entitled to them. They are not things that you deserve to see. If somebody is nice enough with the permission of the other people involved to share them, that is nice, but that is not something that you should feel entitled to. That said, there are ways to let people know ahead of time that you have had conversations with this person in private, that you know stuff that they don't know, and that they have committed to changing, or that they're interested in re-educating themselves, or whatever the topic might be. That was a step that I think was missed in this particular instance that we're not discussing at all. Was the, hey, guess what? We had a conversation with this person. We understand where this person is coming from. This person understands where they went wrong and is going to fix it next week. Cool story. Now let's move on. Maybe we'll take a caller about it and just have it out here, but be transparent about it, right? And it's not that it was intentionally clandestine, right? But it was just something, oh, we talked about it. That's good. We can move on. I think today things would be different just with the amount of canceling going on. There would be a lot more awareness of, oh, this is something we need to let the audience know as well. We have this under control. And then it's up to the audience to decide whether or not they trust you, right? It's up to them to decide, do I trust this person to make an informed decision about the moral worth of another person? But ultimately, you can't control whether or not other people trust you. So the most you can do is be transparent about it.
So, like, you're encouraging to reach out and find the information if you want to, but of course it's a person. Like, if somebody reached out to me and Ethan about something that we did, or it's probably well within our rights to say, look, this is something we don't want to discuss about further. Yes, we've dealt with it quietly. We're all going to move on from here. But in such an event, like, what is the best way to reassure the audience that, like, yeah, we screwed up. we learned from it, you know, the without going into the personal specifics of these specific people reached out to us and this is what we talked about, but more like how do we, because this is one of the big reasons I want to have this conversation. It's like, we're new at this. It's not a matter of if we're gonna screw something up, it's a matter of when. Right?
Oh yeah, no.
So
it's the job hazard for us. Like our job hazards are carpal tunnel and being canceled.
Mine is I need to get glasses or contacts, because you see, whenever I look at the screen weird, you see that reflection. I have to actually be tilting my chin down so that I don't glare into my camera.
I didn't get carpal tunnel. I got ulnar decompression, but I already had the surgeries. So
oh jeez.
Yeah, those were not fun. They are very painful.
That doesn't sound fun.
Hey guys, I think my mom is in chat.
Oh.
Yeah, I know this is cool. This is the first
Mom.
I think, I don't know for sure, but that username looks very familiar. Anyway, okay. So when it comes to these private conversations, like, what's the best thing that we can do if someone has reached out to us and then someone else comes later and calls us out on something?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do there?
Yeah.
Do we just say, yeah, somebody already talked to us, we're good? That seems dismissive.
Right. Well, I think to a certain extent, again, it becomes this concept of privacy. Nobody's owed your personal life. Parasocial relationships are weird, and they can be amazing, but they can also be very invasive if they aren't controlled and maintained. So nobody who is a fan, nobody who watches your stuff is owed any amount of information about your personal life. I deal with this all the time in regards to gender, right? Sometimes people will reach out and they'll be super open and interested and be like, hey, I want to know more. Can you tell me? And sometimes we'll be like, yeah, sure. Why not? I've got 15 minutes. I'll educate this stranger on the topic of gender. But a lot of the time it's, hey, tell me why you deserve to be labeled non-binary. I'm like, no, that is not something you need to know. That's not something that I need to share with you. So, sorry, what now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Someone actually said that to you? Tell me why you deserve to be?
In so many words, yes. That is the tone of a lot of these comments are, prove to me that you exist as the thing you say you are, because otherwise you don't count. And whenever I get that vibe, that's a very good vibe to be like, cool, moving you over here to the red pile. But it's a good question about how to deal with it. If enough people come forward with concerns, and it's not just a one-off, and it's multiple people coming to you saying, hey, I'm a little bit concerned. This is something I heard. Can you clarify? You might want to consider just putting out a short video about it and saying, hey, we have people who are interested in this topic. We are going to respect the privacy of everybody involved. We're not going to name names unless, of course, you have their permission. But here's essentially what happened. Here's the tweet. Here's the photo. Here's whatever. Here's how I feel about it. Make your judgment. And more often than not, if you present yourself as somebody who is willing to learn, as somebody who is taking a proactive step forward and offering yourself up to being determined whether or not people want to continue supporting you, then people will continue to support you. And that's, I think, the difference between Alana Joy and Jenna Marbles, right? So Alana stepped up and was like, hey, before anybody else finds this or digs this up or gets upset, here's something that I did that I dislike about myself. And here's what I learned, and here's how I changed. Jenna dealt with it well, I think, by coming out and apologizing legitimately for it. But she did it after people already found stuff, and then she had tried to get rid of the evidence by deleting it. And it was a little bit more complex, and it looked fishy because other people had to call her out. The videos had been taken down. She hadn't responded for a while about it, so it seemed like she was dodging. And I'm not saying that's the case, right? The death knell here is being a judge in terms of motivation and determining what someone else's motivation is when you cannot possibly know that. So I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's what that looked like because of the way it was handled. So I would say be proactive, be upfront, but also make sure that you're balancing taking care of your audience with letting them get too close.
This is good. This is beautiful, because like I have now become famous for, here's Puck, he's out here, he talks the good talk. I don't think I can tell you a single thing about what Puck actually stands for or believes, right? Like I've somehow managed to be on this sphere for about 3 months. And I remember, who was it, Ethan, that actually said, wait a second, do we even know if Puck is atheist? Why is he on an atheist show? Yeah. Right, because I famously don't ever put a position on anything, right?
You like almost dodge it. Well, I don't have enough information. Like you're very, very careful to ever state your position.
Or you remember like what I used to say when we first started, it's like, oh, we're not here to talk about my beliefs here. We're here to talk. We're here to focus on the guest. We're going to talk about this. Now we opened this up a little bit because Ethan took me to task on my show on my Twitch channel. He finally got on there and he finally had the opportunity to go and say, all right, well, Pug, well, how do you really feel about that Second Amendment?
Nice, turn the tables on you. That's fun.
He did. It was great to do that. But that's why that's one of the reasons I'm afraid to step out and do this is because. Like, no matter what position I hold on, let's say, just say Second Amendment, right? The head of Puckology, I like that. No matter what position I hold, there's going to be people who agree with me and people who disagree with me. That's fine. But there's also going to be that person or group of people that says, you know what? I thought you were one of us. And now that I know this about you, I can't back this up anymore. It's hard to say which is worse, because if somebody just disagrees with you from the beginning, fine, I knew I was going to have detractors. But like, at what point is, like, the Second Amendment doesn't describe all of who I am. We disagree on this one thing, but there's so many other things that we do agree on that we can still be allies on, that I am still a good spokesperson for, that I can still put off good content. Yeah, I get it. We disagree on this. And it might even be something serious. Like, at what point is something so serious, nothing else that person says matters?
Right.
I don't know where that line is. What do you think about that?
I think that's an individual's determination, honestly. I don't think that there is a line in the sand, really, unless you're talking about extreme cases where somebody has repeatedly said a thing that is offensive or harmful and doesn't show any signs of not saying that anymore, right? Like, we can talk about J.K. Rowling, right? There's somebody who's prime for a cancel. For good reason, because she meets all the criteria, right? She is somebody who, and this is something we didn't touch on, but I'd love to like jump into this real quick.
Throw it out.
The way that canceling originated, the reason that it originated in the first place was not what we're using it for now. It has been readjusted and refocused, but initially what canceling was the last attempt to hold people in power accountable when no one else would. So think about like Harvey Weinstein, right? Nobody in Hollywood was going to stop working with him. Nobody in law enforcement was going to hold him accountable for the things he's did. And nobody was going to listen to 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 women who came forward and said that he was a rapist. So what do you do in that situation? If you know that he is still in power, that he is still putting people at risk, that he has this backstory that is full of horrible things, you cancel him. And that is the last thing you do, because you don't have any other recourse. You can't reach out to him and educate him. You can't get his side of the story. You can't do anything like that, and nor should you worry about that, right? This is something where people were motivated to stand behind these women and to, again, attack that social capital that he had that eventually led to justice in that case. J.K. Rowling is somebody else who is extremely successful, extremely untouchable in terms of detractors, just because she is so wealthy, so popular, so esteemed in her community. And yet she's perpetrating these very, very harmful ideas with increasing aggression. And so that is a situation where me as an individual, I can't do anything. I can't reach out to J.K. Rowling and be like, so I want to educate you on trans rights. Like, that's never going to work. Right. And I can't, there's no one I can go to get her to stop. So the last thing that I can do is raise my voice against what she's doing and stop buying books, and maybe even stop going to places that stock the books, if that's how far you want to go. But that is an example of a cancellation that would be merited, that would be using cancel culture for what canceling was created to do. In terms of individuals, that's not who it was meant for. It's not meant for people just like us. It's not meant for people with a couple more thousand subscribers than we have, right? It's it's overshooting, if that makes sense. And I apologize because I went off on this tangent and I completely forgot the actual question.
No, it's beautiful because this is somewhere I wanted to go too. Like I am new to a lot of gender identity questions. The term trans exclusionary radical feminist is something I only heard for the first time like last year. Right. I'm new to this whole thing. And so now this raises an interesting question to talk about J.K. Rowling specifically, who put out a wonderfully written series of books about 10 to 15 years ago that a lot of you may have heard of. The thing is, those are still like the quality of those books has not changed because of what we now know about the author. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a little torn. I don't know what to do about this. Where if I had never heard about this series of books before, had never like pretty much grown up with it, and learned to love it and anticipated every movie that came out, wondering, wow, what are they going to leave out of this one? Because, they can't show everything in the books, right? Like I grew up in the era where I looked forward to the next movie, the next book. Okay. Knowing that now, a lot of people who have never read that series, and for the next author that this happens to, that has a series of books that have never been written, what do we do about that? Because the quality of the books is not changed. Right. Only the quality of and the perception of the author. Mm-hmm. So what then do we do with this person's body of work?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to punt that to Lindsay Ellis, who also gave an amazing talk on being canceled, by the way, and how to come back from that. So if you're interested in Lindsay Ellis's work, she's been canceled multiple times by the alt-right. So she's one of the good ones, but she also does a very in-depth kind of literary analysis of the concept of death of the author, which is this idea that you can divorce the work from the creator and whether or not that's applicable in Rowling's case. So I just watched that, I think, yesterday. So definitely check that out. The takeaway that I had was enjoy the books if you have them, enjoy the movies if you've got them. The actors have since come out in against her, so that is not something that I need to worry about. I know where the actors stand, and they're the ones I'm watching. My only hesitation would be giving more money to this now anti-trans machine, essentially. So for me, my thought would be, all right, well, if it's if it's on a platform that I don't have to pay, then I'll consume it. If I already have the books, I'll read them. If I own the movies, I know my mom owns all of the Harry Potter movies, which is weird because she's like a super hardcore Christian, but she absolutely loves them. So yeah, she doesn't need to throw them out. That's not a thing that I would ask of anybody. If you love the books, you love the books. The only consideration would then be, okay, well, is having a monthly subscription to Pottermore something that you want to do now? If that's something that you're doing, or do you want to go and watch the next Fantastic Beasts movie in theaters where the money goes straight to her? So there's nuance to this as well. It's certainly not a either or situation where either you're a transphobe or you throw all your books out in a big book burning situation. So
let's talk about putting money into things, because one of the events that happened in the past couple of weeks, since this conversation's been in the books for like 3-4 weeks now, right? And then stuff just kept piling on. And if I wasn't an atheist, I would say the universe was making it possible for us to have this conversation. But it happened a couple of weeks ago, the Twitch blackout, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, I don't know if this is truly canceled because it's not an individual, but it's cancel adjacent, because it's kind of going along the same lines of, if enough people call this out, they're going to do something about it. Now, the problem with, in my opinion, the Twitch blackout is it wasn't big enough. It didn't really it had support, but I don't know if everybody supporting it truly knew what they were supporting. Right. And I don't know that was the best way to make that statement. Mm-hmm. Right? So those three things combined, it's yeah, people did it. Yeah, it brought visibility, and hashtag Twitch blackout was trending. So, it brought light to this. But if you look at the situation, it looks like Twitch was already on top of things before the blackout actually happened. And they knew that they needed to revise their policy as far as their relationship with their partners. I don't know too much about it, so I'm not speaking on this as an expert, just my observation that there was already stuff in the works before hashtag Twitch blackout was ever a thing. So I don't know how effective it was as far as changing policy. And we also look at things like Chick-fil-A is another weird one, where there are a lot of people who won't go to Chick-fil-A because of their stances. But then Chick-fil-A also uses Coca-Cola and Heinz and Windows and so a whole bunch of other companies that are very LGBT friendly. So it's like it almost becomes impossible to cancel.
It feels very much like
one thing.
it feels like the point system in The Good Place, if you've watched that show. Oh, guys. Oh, my friends. That is definitely something that's your homework.
I've written this down. I also wrote down renegade cult, so a renegade cat.
So I enjoyed it a lot.
Cult of tradition, yeah. I'm taking good notes on this because this is my big thing after the end of What the Puck is. Like, What the Puck is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of it. Like, I'll tell you, like, I'll always tell you at the end of it what I learned coming out of it, or coming from the conversation, where I started and where I am now. But this is the beginning, and hopefully, like 6 months from now, I'm going to have another conversation, maybe with you, saying, okay, this is where we left off 6 months ago. This is where I am now. So, yeah,
certainly, and
give me
that's
all the homework.
More than anything, though, I think that's your ticket to avoiding becoming somebody who is cancel worthy. Not only because you are consistently growing and learning as a person and becoming aware of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what is good, what is not as good, what is right, what is not as accurate. But also you are exemplifying the process of learning to other people. So if they see you learn this, then they will trust you to learn that. A lot of the people who are being canceled don't put the emphasis on, I don't know this. Let's learn about it. Let's have a conversation. Give me homework. Their personalities. It is who they are. And if you dislike it, F you, puck you. But for you guys and for myself, I hope, the ethos that I bring to this is I don't know shit. I don't know things.
But
and
if you don't know shit, V, then I really don't know shit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The fact that people, I've pulled a fast one on all of you, just so you're aware.
It's the confidence by which you present it. You square your shoulders, you look straight at the camera, say what you need to say. There are people who disagree with you, but at least they disagree with you with respect, and they look at the integrity that you bring to them. No, look, I'm trying to do the same thing. You think I have any confidence in my Second Amendment opinions? No, but as long as I get this little wrinkle in my forehead right here, people take me seriously right now. That's and that's what it is. Half of it is the delivery. And if I came into that conversation, it's like, well, I don't know, but this is kind of what I've come up with. No. Square your shoulders. Confidence.
Yep.
So we have about 15 minutes left. Again, open it up to chat for any questions. Ethan, I thought I saw Raina had a question that I think would be interesting to get to. If you can scroll up and start looking for questions. V, this is probably a good time to talk about cancel by proxy.
Yes. Oh, we didn't get to that, did we? No. Okay, perfect.
You want to do the...
No. We can do that at the end. Cancel by proxy is too interesting to just drop. Raina, we will absolutely get to your question.
So cancel by proxy is, again, nuanced and tricky because there are enablers and there are people who are just friends and family and don't deserve it. So if somebody is doing something that is actively harmful and there are people there who are telling them that they are fine and that they are doing the right thing and that everybody else is, mistaken and do you, don't be mad, continue to do your thing, that's enabling and that's bad and that should be called out. Do they deserve to be canceled? No, but they should be presented with evidence of this person's wrongdoing and given the choice to make a decision for themselves. And it's not going to be as simple as, hey, here's the screenshot. Now decide you don't want to be friends with this person anymore, right? It's never going to be that simple or that nuanced. But there is a concept of enabling that I think a lot of canceling by proxy is worried about. But more often, it's just people who are friends with the person who's in the spotlight right now. And a lot of the time it can be a tactic that is used specifically. And this is something Lindsay Ellis talks about as well in her discussion on this subject. It is social isolation. it is making it so that people feel scared to interact with you, or feel like they have to apologize for interacting with you, or feel like you have to apologize for bringing the inevitable crowd of detractors to that other person's platform. And it just makes it difficult to have conversations. And so for me, I think that it's important to know that on the one hand, yes, enablers are real. Enablers perpetuate abuse, and enablers should be called out. But also, guys, it's not my job to determine who's an enabler and who's just an innocent bystander. That's not something that I am equipped to do. Even if I was in that person's life in any tangential way, that's not something I'd be equipped to do, let alone being a stranger on the internet. So for me, unless you can actually prove to me that this person is enabling someone who you have also proven to be abusive in some way, I am not going to give it much water or much thought, because why should I? That's not my job. So I'm more than willing to be convinced that somebody needs to be canceled. I'm not saying that I will never be convinced. There are people that I have been convinced needed to be canceled, but I need to be convinced. If my motivation is to keep other people from being mad at me, or to cave to social pressure, or to just be safe, rather, be safe than sorry, that is putting somebody else that is potentially innocent at risk, and I can't justify that for myself. So I'm open to whatever evidence you've got about this person who is tangentially related to this other person, but I'm going to do my research, and I'm going to determine whether or not I can support cancellation. And if I can't, then I'm not going to. My only metric is, can I justify this, right? If somebody comes to me and says, V, why aren't you canceling this person? This other person says they're mean. This other person says they're bad.
Right.
If I can say, well, I was there, because that's happened as well, right? There have been times where people have tried to cancel people I was in the room with while the thing was happening. And I'm just like, I was there. I know what happened. You can't spin this. But in other situations, I'll be okay, give me your evidence, right? It's the same thing that we do on Talk Heathen all the time. You're making a claim, back it up. I'm willing to be convinced. And I care deeply about making sure that I am on the right side of things, and that I'm supporting people who deserve my support. But I'm not going to go blindly into this. This isn't something that anyone should be required to do. And that's kind of my last point, and I'll leave it at this, is pay attention to who is being emotionally manipulative in the situation. Sometimes, unfortunately, it will be both people, and then you'll be in the situation where you have to make a decision based on other evidence. But a lot of the time, you can tell which one is relying on emotional manipulation in order to get you to their side. Are they saying, oh, you should do this because it's the right thing, and I know you're a good person, and you should come over here so that you don't get hurt when I inevitably drop this thing? If somebody's talking to you like that, chances are I'm going to treat them with a little bit more hesitation and a little bit more suspicion than the person who's like, hey, here's what's going on. This is my take on it. Make your own case. I'm not going to stop you. Either way, just do you. That person, I'm going to inevitably trust a little bit more, just because they aren't relying on emotional tactics to make their point.
See, my brain is weird in the sense that I'm able to very easily isolate two things from each other, right? And I don't have the ability, or frankly the desire to go to the past of all the people who I want to talk to, and all the people that I have talked to, and all the people that have talked to the people that I want to talk to try to suss out all these things. Because I can disagree with you, V, on a number of things, and I can still think that you have great content that I would want to bring forward. I'm not saying I do have strong disagreements, just saying, it's that we're humans. We're gonna come up.
We're good.
Yeah, but like, I'm having still some difficulty, and there's no good way to answer this. We're not going to resolve it in 5 minutes. As to that point where this person, this action that this person has done is so irredeemable that I won't even listen to anything else that they have to say, because a person can like I probably have some traffic tickets that I haven't dealt with, but that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the moral ontological argument. Okay, I can separate those. I understand that in some cases something is so heinous And the big problem that I have with that is like there is something like it's not illegal to be a TERF. You're not going to be imprisoned for it. It's probably not a great thing to be, but like
Right.
you can't imprison someone. The only thing you can do then is to call out the behavior and say, no, this is not how we do this. And this is, which leads to my last question is what is the end game here? When someone is canceled, what are the cancelers trying to accomplish? And this is probably a question best left for someone who strongly believes in cancel culture. So this is a call out. If anybody in the audience right now believes that this is an effective means of spreading the social awareness, come on, let's have this conversation. I'd love to. I don't really see the effectiveness, as we pointed out. We talked about a lot of other people today. You know what? A lot of these people who were called out for cancel, they were never prosecuted. They still have good careers. They still have stable viewership. Twitch is still Twitch, right? And a lot of places are still going to operate. Maybe they took a hit now, but in a few years, it's going to be like nothing ever happened.
Yeah. And that is a really good question, and something that I think should be brought up more frequently, which is what is the end game? And in terms of cancel culture as a whole, I have no idea what the end game would be. Like everybody putting pronouns in their bios, I guess, is the end goal there or something.
Yeah, I don't know enough about, like, I don't think cancel culture is unified enough to say this is our goal.
No, not at all. Yeah. Not even slightly. But the goal for individual people should be something that you're looking at, right? What is my goal in piling on? Sometimes it's necessary, right? We could talk about, I know this is stretching the term a little bit, but we can talk about the protests against police brutality as a form of canceling, right? Hey, this is something you're doing. We want you to stop. We're going to call you out until you do. And it's working slowly but surely because we're seeing different laws go into effect. Now, are they the best laws? No. Are they going to be the most effective at actually curtailing police brutality? No. But there are at least these signals that, oh, people are paying attention. This is something that people are beginning to incorporate into their zeitgeist. And so for me, the purpose of canceling somebody would be to make sure that they are doing as little harm as possible. I don't care if J.K. Rowling is honestly confused or miseducated or malicious. I don't care if in 10 years she comes back and she's like, I've learned things and I'm better now. I got better. I don't care about her personally. I care about the actions that she is taking. And so I am then going to take a comparable action, right? Because she is the one weaponizing the platform. She is the one weaponizing her audience space. And so I'm just meeting kind in kind, right? And so my only goal is to make sure that whoever is perpetuating some kind of abuse in the moment is stopped as soon as possible. If I can help with that, I would love to, and I will. But that all comes down to, can you prove to me that this person is causing harm in the first place?
Let's go ahead and address Raina's question. Then there was one other just a little bit below that. I'll see if I can find it.
Perfect.
I'd never actually personally heard of this, but maybe you guys have. And we got to come up with something better, because every time you put on a question, we just wash over the guest. Ethan.
I know, that's the only way I have right now, though.
Yeah, Via's still there, I promise.
We're good.
It was always used as a tactic by punk groups later who discovered band members were sexual assailants. What are your thoughts on how effective this tactic is? What responsibility do social media platforms have, in your opinion, to cancel individuals? Now, this is something that's interesting, like when it came up with Twitch, because Twitch itself was not responsible for a lot of the harassment that was going on, but they do have, these people are partners. They get paid a lot by Twitch, and Twitch is basically, by giving them the partner title, they're saying, yeah, we like what this person does. Yeah. How liable should Twitch be if a partner does something? In two different cases, one of them is on Twitch, right? It's like, it's one thing if they're doing it there, and then it's another thing completely if they do something that's a little bit off color outside of the platform completely. Mm-hmm. But then now, the Twitch audience is saying, hey, Twitch, you got to do something about this.
Right. Well,
so what is the platform's position?
I am hesitant to weigh in on this just because I do not run a multi-million-dollar social media platform, so I have no experience to draw from.
You don't?
Unfortunately, not yet. Not yet.
We're working on that. We're working on the androgynous cat cyborg empire.
There you go.
We are.
Yep. There you go. No, but for me, that's a purely business decision. I don't think we can hold a company morally accountable, really, to something. Again, if they perpetuate a harm, if they perpetuate something that is harmful, like the pipeline in, I believe, South Dakota, Standing Rock, if they are actively perpetuating something, I'm going to go protest that, right? I'm going to raise my voice against that because, again, there's active harm being done. In terms of, oh, you should cancel this person or knock this person off your platform, I think practically that's going to be a business decision. If enough people are upset at you for keeping them on, you knock them off. You know, that's how that is going to be addressed. Should it be that way? I don't know. Is it working like that? Yes. So that's why, again, call out culture, the Twitch blackout is effective in certain circumstances because you are communicating to a company in the way that they understand, which is you're losing revenue, you're losing audience members. And if that's something that they want to take into account during their conversations about whether or not to let go of this partner, then that's on them. But we cannot be the moral arbiters of what Jack from Twitter is doing, you know? So in certain circumstances, I do think that it's not a matter of First Amendment rights. That bugs me like no one's business when people are like, but my rights. It's like, you're on a private company's platform. You don't get rights here. You agree to the terms of service like everyone else. So certainly they are justified in doing so if they want to. It's just, I don't think that we have the godlike powers of moral arbitration to determine whether or not they should in any particular instance.
And to answer Bestname Ever's question, I genuinely don't know. It seems reasonable that, because I'm a Twitch affiliate, it seems reasonable that the Twitch partnership program has a completely different set of standards that they have to go by. Like, I know what's on my terms of service. I couldn't tell you what's on the partner one. I have to imagine that somewhere in there is a code of conduct, at least while you're streaming on the platform. Right. But as far as conduct out of that platform, I don't know that, and it seems like the kind of thing that's going to have to be handled like case by case, right? It's like, yeah, we disagree with this person's political stance, but they're not bringing politics onto Twitch. We can't really do anything about that, right? So I don't know. I can see that being a good business answer. I can see it also being highly unsatisfactory as a social justice answer.
Yes. Sorry, I am not a satisfactory social justice warrior, and that's fine with me.
Okay, and then we had a question. Let's see, a little bit further down here. I don't know what this was in response to, but we have OEF Bug Out. Hello, and thank you for your question. Is it ethical to drag in a local company in a personal quest against someone you find disgusting or distasteful? So this is interesting, where we now say, you know, it's like, I have a problem with this person. Should I, and doxing goes into this too, right? Like, this person is racist. Hey, they work for this bakery or whatever. Let's tell the bakery what their employee says. So where does that come in? I
think that this was in response to me saying maybe don't go to bookstores that stock Harry Potter.
Okay.
I'm assuming that that's when that happened in the conversation. For me, I think that it would have to be a matter of, again, it's a case-by-case basis. If it's a small local bookstore, for example, who hosts, you know, drag story time for kids and is clearly someone who is, you know, giving back to their community, then sure, if you want to support them, go ahead. I'm certainly not saying that you should never buy a Harry Potter book or boycott a bookstore, right? That's not my platform. But I do think that you have to be aware of where your money is going. And unfortunately, the way our society is set up, money speaks louder than words a lot of the time. And if you can impact somebody's revenue stream, you can impact their the way they interact with you, the way they interact with their audience, the way they interact with the world. So making sure that you are using that effectively based on your own moral code, right? You deciding to boycott Powell's books will not ultimately make J.K. Rowling stop spitting transphobia, right?
You just did my favorite bookstore, so I have to give you hearts for that.
It needs to be everybody's favorite bookstore. Anybody for whom Powell's Books is not favorite, I pity you all.
Powell's Ethan is a bookstore. It's a indie bookstore that is so big it has its own parking garage. Just so you know.
It's amazing.
It's
My
massive,
family
it
got
is
lost
gorgeous.
in there for 2 full hours. They were
I
like,
would have been fine
like,
lost in there for 2
really,
hours.
I'm lost. I've been trying to
much.
get out through it. Oh
See,
my God.
now you know that I speak Portland also.
There you go.
Okay, so
No, but
street cred. This is good. Okay.
For me, I'm not saying that there is a certain action that you should always take, but being aware that your money speaks and being aware of where you're putting that money is very effective. And certainly it's not going to be the linchpin in the conversation. You are not going to be the person to stop any of this, right? It is not on you. So get yourself out of that mindset for this whole conversation. It's not on you to decide anything. You are not going to be the person that makes it go one way or another. But you do have a responsibility as somebody on the internet who consumes things and who platforms things and who has an opinion and has people who values that opinion to inform yourself and make decisions that are right for you.
You know, usually I end a What the Puck episode by talking about where I was in the beginning and where after the conversation, this is where I am now. I have to confess, though, you did a wonderful job presenting the material, but honestly, I still just have more questions. This is a topic that is so huge, and there's so many nuances, and there's so much yet to be discovered that I like the best thing that I can say is I now have more material to look over. And that's good in the sense that I'm going to continue doing it. Bad in the sense that I couldn't tell you how far my needle is moved from an hour ago. And I mean, I get that probably wasn't your goal. I mean, our goal here is to dialogue and learn as much as we can and educate the audience on what we can. But really, the best that I've got is there's so much more to learn. Now, as a content creator myself, and Ethan can verify this. I am starting to come out a little bit more about being public with my views. I have I used to just stream on Twitch, but now every Friday I have a guest on, grill me. And Ethan grilled me this Friday. Sassy Heathen, who's in chat, is going to grill me next week. After that, Trina Deluca, the hard atheist conservative, is going to grill me. So I'm learning to put myself out there. And you know what? If I make a mistake, and I will, it's not a matter of if, but when. Please reach out to me. Let me know. I don't want to say things that are harmful to me or anybody else. I just want to go out, it sounds almost pretentious to say, but I am not intentionally harming anybody. If I do, I want to stop. Okay. And if I'm saying something that I don't realize is harmful, somebody tell me before it gets to the point where my family and my friends get involved just because they're my friends. Let's deal with this quietly. Let's fix the problem before it becomes everybody else's problem.
Right. Definitely. And I do want to just maybe end with this last kind of caution, I guess, as somebody who has done this for about a year now and is still learning the ropes. Being open on the internet is not necessarily a virtue. Right. It doesn't mean you're a better YouTuber. It doesn't mean that you've reached some higher echelon of YouTubedom. It's just a preferred method of communication. I know some people in this business, this industry, that are immensely open and honest and community oriented, and everything that they are going through, they will put out there. And that's great for them. But I know other people who have a very cultivated brand and they put out what they want to put out and nothing more and nothing less. And that's also fine. So certainly if what you want to do is start expanding your knowledge base in a public manner and put yourself out there more, that's an admirable goal. And I support that. But I don't want to set it up to be the situation where if you're not doing that, you're doing something wrong. Because it's just as valid to be a personality, right? The people on CNN, on Fox, on whatever platform you watch news on, that's not them, right?
Right, it's a persona, it's a character. Right,
and same with me. Like, if you interact with me on Twitter, you probably know the most realistic version of me. But on the show, I am Vila Bianca, the host of the ACA, which is very different from Vila Bianca, the manager of the company that I work for, or the friend or the partner, right? So it's okay to have a persona and to keep that separate from other things, if that's your preference. So just putting that out there as well.
Thank you very much for coming out here and taking your time to talk to us and educate the audience. It's always such an honor to me that someone is willing to take their, like, time is the most precious thing we have, right? Once you spend it, you can never get it back. And I'm honored that you thought of our show as worth taking this time. And as a special guest, or a special gift to all the guests on What the Puck, I do have a gift for you. I'm going to turn on the screen share here. Let me see. For everybody who comes on my show, I talk to my graphic designer and I have them make a custom puck in their likeness.
Oh.
So we have here the official, the official Villa Bianca puck.
Yes.
And I will be sending this to you in PDF and PNG form. Use it everywhere you want. Anytime you come on a YFNA show in the future, if you would like us to use this as your image, sure, we will. And I would love to have a roundtable with like a whole bunch of my guests calling me out for all the crazy things that I've done, and we'll just have a whole bunch of pucks. There, it'll be the What the Pucks episode. So there you go. I'll send this to you. Make sure I get like an email address or something off the air. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much, V, for coming on and talking to us this evening. And thank you, Ethan, for having the channel for us to do this on.
Well, I really wanted to talk about cancel culture just because I know one day it's absolutely going to hit me. Like someone's going to dig through my stuff and I'll be, hey, I've said from the get-go, I was not the person that I am right now. So, and I don't like it. I feel like it's very high school, like mob mentality. People, they don't give you a chance to explain. They don't give you a chance to talk to you. They just want to immediately shut you down without even hearing the entire story.
Yeah, I think again, like I've shared screenshots of Facebook memories on Twitter. Like, oh my God, you guys, look at this poor lost baby. So yeah, I think being open and honest about the fact that we've all changed as people. It's just something that happens. And us more than most, I think, have put in a little bit of extra work to deconstruct prior views and make sure that we are all moving forward in a progressive and positive way. But thank you guys so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about something that isn't God related for once. I mean, I love those conversations, but it's fun to talk about other things as well.
I was just happy to hear the name Powell's again. That was awesome that you would bring up Powell's. This is an inside joke between you and me because I don't think anybody in the audience knows what we're talking about. Getting lost, like spending a day at Powell's and then realizing you have not finished exploring the place and you need to go back the next day. Thank goodness it's right on the red line, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Ethan, upcoming shows?
Tomorrow we have the Death with Dignity Roundtable beginning at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time featuring Dave Warnock, Sassy Heathen, Aaron and Catalina, and Craig Reed, hosted by your friendly neighborhood atheist. So also thank you to my top tier patrons. Thank you, City Plaza, Trina, Deluca, Kenneth, Leonard, and Christian Watkins. And then for those of you who don't know, every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. we have a new call-in show called The Perspective, and Puck will be the host next Tuesday. I don't know how I got him to agree to that, but I did.
I lost the coin flip. But
lost the coin flip.
No, it is my first time doing live call-in, so this will be interesting for all of us, I think.
Nice.
Special thanks to Villa Bianca, and all of their links are in the description to their website, Patreon, and Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Have a good night. Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.